Do you bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Appreciate you streaming in with us here on the JAKIB Media. New logo we got there. JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. Other than the the Sixers just getting their rear ends handed to them in Boston yesterday. How was your weekend, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, was as good as can be expected. I didn't think it'd be that bad, but I wasn't expecting the Sixers to go up and win Game 7. You'd like to have a little bit more fights, but it is what it is, and that's one of the reasons we're here, Jody. Turn the page, get the fans off the pathetic performance. I don't know how other way to describe it, but that was not a championship level performance. Let's put it that way.
Ugliness is what it was, getting their heads handed to them. The only intrigue is how many hours until we hear officially that Doc Rivers is no longer the coach of the 76ers.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that's going to happen in the next day or so. And I do expect that to happen. Sorry, Doc. I think he's out.
And by the way, I think it was John Machota. He brought it up. Now, it's a cliche in all sports. You can have the best coaches. I'll take the best talent. It's players first. I said that in the Super Bowl, even more so in that game. Look, Doc, I agree with you. He's going to get fired, and somebody's got to pay. You can't fire all the players. But, man, it starts with the big guy in the middle. People need to have some really, really difficult discussions. I've been talking about this for years, and I think they finally understand that now. I'm one of those people, and I'll relate it to football because we're a football show. You've probably heard me say it numerous times, Jody. I hate when people say so-and-so can't win a championship in football. So-and-so can't win a championship. So, because I don't believe that. A lot of things have to fall into place, but we've seen it time and time again where, especially at the quarterback position, certain guys win championships that you never thought would win a championship. But everything's got to be perfect around them. I'm not saying Joel Embiid can't win a championship, because he certainly can. He's one of the best players in basketball. But they can't win a championship the way they play, and that's building an offense around a guy. In the modern NBA, who wins? You can go back to Kawhi Leonard beating the Sixers, Trae Young, Jimmy Butler, yesterday it's Jason Tatum. It's a win guys league now. You need creators to close games. This isn't the 1970s, the 1980s where you dump it. And by the way, you can't dump it into the big guy anyway because he wants to be a wing player. And they put Marcus Smart on him, and he's getting pushed out 16 feet away from the basket. That's all I'm saying.
I think you can win with Joel Embiid. I think you can win with him being the number one option. He can't be the only option, as you correctly stated. To undersell how important wing players and athleticism is in the NBA, you'd be making a massive mistake. Joel can still be your number one option, but he can't be your
All
when
right,
in doubt, we're going to give it to him
let me
8
describe
straight
it like this,
possessions
Jody.
option, which the Sixers did way too much this year.
Forget number one, forget number two. Let me put it this way. He can't be the closer. So however you want to manipulate it, when it's a tie game late, he can't be the closer. That's where you need the creator. That's where you need the guy to step up, as Jason Tatum did in Game 6. That's what they're missing. Kawhi Leonard, again, Trae Young, again, Jimmy Butler, again and again and again and again. You need the closer, and the closer has to be the creator. You could say back in the day, even Kobe, Shaq. Kobe was the closer. You could argue Shaq was the guy, but Kobe was the closer. They need the closer. They can't play the way they play. That's what I'm saying. He can be the number one guy, play into his ego, manipulate him, but he can't be the closer. Can't win that way.
We definitely found out that James Harden is not the closer this playoff run. Sorry, but the Sixers certainly need to go in another direction there. All right, yeah, we are Birds 365. So that is the main topic of conversation each time we do the show. We got two good guests, two Eagles guys to hop on with us. Les Bowen and Jeff Kerr will both be aboard. Johnny Mac, keeping my eye on the football wire this weekend. We're not lamenting the Sixers' chances and then the Sixers' fate thereafter. Couple of signings around the league. No real move the needle type names. Guys, oh, wow, that's a major addition. No, it's kind of fill in the blank, to use Howie Roseman's one of his new favorite terms, lottery ticket type guys that you're not paying a whole hell of a lot of money to, but you're hoping they can give you more than just what you'd expect out of someone making the veteran NFL minimum. But this is the time of year where you do see some signings because the draft is come and gone. Teams have signed their undrafted free agents. Their overall 90-man roster is where it is. Probably pretty close to 90. Eagles right now, I believe, sit at 86. So they've got some wiggle room and the ability to add. And again, no major names dropping this past weekend, but recognizable names in some spots. Eagles signed no one. And I'm not saying that because I'm shocked that they signed no one. But like I said, this is the time of year where if there is a blank to be filled in, a lottery ticket to be taken, maybe you're looking for all teams to do that with at least one or two guys. Eagles haven't done any. Does that signify to you that they're 100% okay with where their roster is at this stage of the year?
No, Howie's never won, and he says it. I mean, again, there's certain times when Howie tells the truth, and he'll say talent acquisition season goes far beyond free agency, the draft. Now it slows down. Those are the main crux. Those are the main addition points, but he's proven it time and time again. From his standpoint, it goes right up to the trade deadline. That's talent acquisition season. And he did it last year and really, he found a new avenue, if you think about it, when he brought in Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh late in the process as sort of a new ring shopping, I like to call it, formula. If you're a good team, maybe convince these guys who don't want to play. In both of their case, they made a ton of money. They weren't going to play for the league minimum. Go through all the rigmarole of training camp and off season and all the grind and say, hey, you want to come in and make a run in November and try to get a ring? And they both said, yeah, why not? And it worked out pretty well. Obviously, they didn't accomplish the ultimate goal, but those guys were contributors and they had a very good team. You want to rewind, you go to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on August 30th. You want to rewind. It's happened in the past with Ronald Darby. May signings, LeGarrette Blount, back in the day. They did add Dan Arnold as one of those guys. And they still have a couple roster spots, and I expect them to sign some tryout guys, probably today, to be honest, because they're back in the building. So they'll probably make it clear if they're signing any of those tryout guys. And then June 1st, obviously, because you're going to have cuts. You already saw it. We've been talking about Zadarius Smith got traded. Well, everybody knew he was out in Minnesota, but they were hanging on, trying to get something for him. They were able to get a couple day 3 picks, really more, moving up in the draft than anything else. But Dalvin Cook, he's another one, same team. He's gone. It's just a matter of when. So no, he's not done. And the most, off-ball linebackers, the most obvious spot. I think they're going to add a body there. And yeah, he's always looking. Always.
Let me ask you about a name you just threw out there. And certainly he was, at least in some media corners, attached to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that is the running back from the Minnesota Vikings. You say he's gone. Why? Why would he be gone? I understand in free agency when you want to clear cap space to be able to upgrade another position. That makes a lot of sense, that if you've got a guy who, in your estimation, and you gave him the contract, but you miscalculated, and he is now too expensive, and it isn't worth the squeeze anymore. I understand all that, but we are now well into May, halfway through May, and your roster it's never completely done, but the majority of it is done. Why would you cut Dalvin Cook? Why would you take nothing in exchange for him? If you're getting something, again, that too makes sense. A draft pick. Well, the draft is come and gone, so you're not going to be able to cash that pick for 11 months. You're just playing with a lesser team. I don't think anyone will argue Dalvin Cook is still a very good player. Might not be worth what his salary says he's supposed to be worth, but a very good player. You're under the cap. You've done most of your offseason salary work, not like you're going to be adding another big-time player, big-time salary. Why would you just cut Dalvin Cook?
One, because they need the money.
Need the money for what?
To sign their rookie class. They can't even sign their first-round pick right now. Well, now they can after they signed Zadarius Smith, but they need more maneuvering room. You mentioned he signed the contract. No, they have a new general manager. He didn't sign the contract. And they have a new age general manager in Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Who's Kwesi Adofo-Mensah? Well, he learned under Andrew Berry, who we know very well here, who learned under Howie Roseman. He does not believe in paying large sums to running backs, especially running backs who, as you mentioned, he's still a very good player, but he's touched the football a ton. He's got chronic shoulder injuries. It's probably not going to get better at this stage. And he's holding them on because he can hold them on, and he's waiting for somebody to give him something. And if he doesn't give them something, he's going to cut him. They already made their declarations known. And this is where I give Howie Roseman the credit over the young GMs. They declare. Brad Holmes, he declared, so everybody knows. And in this case, Kwesi declared. Everybody knows. So he's probably not going to get anything. And ultimately, he's got to release him. I go to Ryan Poles all the time. Ryan was on in Chicago last week, basically admitting what I said on this show. Couldn't take Jalen Carter. Doesn't have the foundation to do it. Can't make that move. Howie takes advantage of these young general managers.
Then Howie screwed up if that's the case. If you knew and Ryan Poles knew that Carter was not going to Chicago, why'd they give up any draft pick to move up and get him?
Because they were concerned about somebody else. They were taking it off the board. And by the way, you throw the young GM a little bone, a 4th-round meaningless pick, and he feels good about himself, and you call him back again, and you fleece him down the road.
So let me get this straight. A 4th-round pick is meaningless, but a 3rd-round pick you wouldn't give up for Patrick Queen.
A 4th-round pick is meaningless for the Eagles. They value day 2 premium picks, 1st, 2nd, 3rd-round picks a lot more than
that's where the dividing line is, because we changed
line.
A 3rd-round pick is tremendous value, and a 4th-round pick is meaningless.
It is clear. Look, you have to delineate, right? You have to delineate that they value. You can disagree with them. They value premium picks, yes, more than day 3 picks. I don't think they're on the weird page that nobody else is. Now you could argue what's the difference between 32 and 33? Really nothing. But one's a first round pick, not this year because they had 31. This year was, you get my point, because of Miami. But what's the difference between 32 and 33? Not much, other than
there's a bigger difference between 32 and 33 than
all right, 64
96 and 97.
64 and 65, 96. My point is, what's the difference between a first and second round pick? What's the difference between a second, third round pick? And context is everything. 96 is not that different from 97. But one's, it's a demarcation line. Their demarcation line is they'll give up day 3 picks. Day 2 picks at a position they don't value. They might give up a day 2 pick, but it's going to be in a position they value. It's not going to be in a position they don't value. It's always the situation, but they don't. I don't know how they can make it more evident that they don't value that position.
Yeah, see, this is one of the main differences between John McMullen and Jody McDonald. I question the Eagles. I don't just accept because they do their business that way, they're right. You seem to do that they don't value it, so therefore that's the way it is. Just because they do it doesn't mean that I can't sit here and say I
disagree with it. You're assuming
round pick and a fourth. There's a much bigger difference between a first round pick and a second round pick. Then there comes the difference between a second and a third, then third and fourth, and with every round you move down, it becomes lesser. But I don't know what the big difference is between third and fourth. That is something I'm just having trouble comprehending. That because they do it on a different day of the draft. It's 10 picks, it's 12 picks, 16 picks, whatever it is. The further away you get away from the number 1 pick, the less the value just has to drop. I don't understand why there's such according to you, in evaluating the Eagles and your inside information and your beliefs of the Eagles system, why it's such a hard and fast line between days.
I didn't say it was a hard and fast line. And in fact, if you rewind, I said it's always about the situation. And I brought up off-ball linebacker. Then the second part is we just disagree on the value of the player. You think Patrick Queen is this star player. I don't think he's a star player. So that's another part of it. Now,
if you're talking situation, we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and their need a linebacker. We're talking about a very specific player for a very specific team who has, in my estimation, a major need at that position.
But okay, so you're saying because they have a need at that position, which we both agree with. And in fact, when you say I always agree with the Eagles, I say all the time, look, they've taken it too far at off-ball linebacker. I have no problem saying when I agree with the Eagles, when I disagree with the Eagles. Now, with this particular player at this particular position, here's where you and I differ. And here's where you get in trouble, in my opinion, when you're roster building. All right, you have a need at this position. All right, that doesn't mean I'm just going to take a player I don't really think is that good because I have a need at this position. Would he be the best linebacker on this team right now? Yeah. The day he stepped in, yes. The day he walked into the building. Now, I assume that Kobe Dean's going to become better very quickly. So that's number one. I do have confidence in Kobe Dean. The organization probably has more confidence in Kobe Dean than I do. And Jody McDonald has probably more confidence in Kobe Dean than I do and the Eagles do. So
yes.
That's baked into it, number one. Number two is the fact that that's when you get in trouble, whether it's the draft, whether it's trade. When you start reaching for stuff because I need this, I need this, I need this, I need that. What the Eagles did well last year.
What the Eagles needed last year was a superstar wide receiver, and they went out and got him one. So sometimes filling a need is exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, but think again, and you want to give the Eagles credit for that. I'll take it back. I'll go in the opposite direction. Guess what? They wanted Calvin Ridley. Guess what? They wanted Christian Kirk.
There's a little
Guess
luck
what?
involved.
They
You're
wanted
right about
Allen
that.
Robinson. They wanted Allen Robinson. So I'm not giving the Eagles flowers. They happen to luck out. They struck out, and they happen to hit a home run later in the process. At safety, Jody, they did the same thing with Marcus Williams. They looked into Tyrann Mathieu. There was a third, Justin Reed. I always get Justin and I think it was Justin Reed. I always get their first names mixed up. They looked into all those players. They couldn't get it done. August 30th, they say, all right, let's call Mickey Loomis. Let's fleece him and try to get, and they get a year out of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Look, they're going to be patient and they're going to get something that they value. They might be wrong, but I agree with the patience part. I'm not reaching, and maybe they like Patrick Queen as much as you do. I have no idea that they don't like Patrick Queen. That's my guess. That's my speculation. And they certainly don't like him enough. And this doesn't even really have to do with Patrick McQueen. I just saw them let TJ Edwards walk for $6.5 million. That's too much. They're not giving up a day 2 pick. That's where my speculation comes from. They're not giving up a day 2 pick for an average linebacker. They're just not doing it.
Yeah, I think he's above average, and I think they need him, and I think it would be a well-spent third-round pick if they could get their hands on the guy. Something the Eagles have shown and did show specifically last year. They'll acquire guys on the last year of their contract. And worst case scenario, if they walk out the door thereafter, the guy becomes a potential compensation pick the year after that. So if you want to go by track record, how he's shown a track record, Kaiser White, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to either trade for or sign free agents who have only 1 year to go on their contract, and then let them fall into the compensation department. And that's exactly what Patrick Queen would do. That's why I don't think a third-round draft pick would be an overpay. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. We are the Birds 365 guys. I see on deck in our waiting room. We got Les Bowen jumping aboard. He joins us next here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
E-A-G-L-E-S. Eagles.
Got your Mac guys here on Birds 365. I see before me our buddy Les Bowen, who jumps in with us here for a May spot to talk about the Eagles. The biggest story last week, Les, was the schedule release, and we now know who, where, and when the Eagles will be playing. Any disrespect shown to the Eagles by the NFL in putting together their schedule in your estimation?
I don't really see that, Jody. I don't really. I'm not a guy who really pores over the schedule that assiduously. I wrote something last week on Facebook. I think you read it. You know, the schedule is the schedule. I mean, you're a good team. You probably had the most talented roster in the league last year. You probably should have won the Super Bowl. Of course, you're going to play good teams. You know, that's kind of how it works. I've never. In all the years I covered the Eagles, I never sat down at the end of the year and thought, you know, the schedule that was really the reason things didn't go well this year. You know, and my other point is people talk about strength of schedule and how the strength of schedule is so daunting. Well, the way they figure out strength of schedule, it's real scientific. They look at what teams did last year. And they say, okay, so this is the strength of schedule for this year. That's like me saying, you know, tomorrow's Tuesday, the whatever it is, 16th or whatever, 17th. Last year on that date, it rained. So therefore, I'm going to expect rain tomorrow. Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. The strength of schedule will be very different in November and December than it is right now. We just don't know what's going to be different, but it always is. Things never happen the way they happened the year before. I just don't. The NFL has done a genius job of taking all these things in the offseason that 30 years ago used to be like, oh, well, you know, and making everything into, you know, now there's all these, the team.
Well, we froze up less. Frozen less. Is he frozen for you, Jody? Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I agree with Les. I always go back to Peyton Manning because I always say, to me, he was the most consistent regular season quarterback of all time.
Yep.
And, you know, when he took off, it was kind of year 2, and we'll try to get Les back up here. Yeah, Les, I was talking about the schedule, and I agree with you with that good team aspect. I always go back to Peyton Manning. I was telling Jody, I think, you know, he kind of took off in year 2 in Indianapolis, and I think it was like 12 consecutive years. They won 10 games, and like 10 or 11 of them, they won 12 games. Like, they're always playing a first-place schedule. They always won 12, 13, 14 games because they were a good team. And it kind of takes care of yourself if you're a good team. However, while I do say that, look, the Eagles don't have that consistency. They were tremendous last season. Now we get to see if they can develop that consistency of being a good team year in and year after year. But if you are a good team, yeah, the schedule, nobody's going to even, it's going to be a blip. You're going to win 12, 13 games.
Well, I also think that maybe the schedule did them a disservice last year in that we all talked about Jonathan Gannon and the defense all season long, and people were dissatisfied, but there were these statistics. You know, they were first in this, they were first in that. They had 70 sacks. Oh, my goodness, you know. And there was this undercurrent of the few times that they played really good quarterbacks with lines that could protect, they really didn't.
We got less issues again. It's that Haddonfield Wi-Fi that we're having problems with.
Haddonfield, well, Haddon Township for last. Nick Sirianni, that's the really well-heeled people in Haddonfield.
Did you pay your cable bill this month, Mr. Bowen? Are they trying to tell you something by freezing up your video on us? Yeah, he's not hearing us. So we got connection issues with Les. But you were saying about Peyton Manning and how the schedule affected him, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, it didn't. Well, my point is, it didn't affect him that much. They were so consistent. I always joke that with those Peyton Colts teams, and really when he went to Denver, you'd start at 10 wins. That was sort of like the default. That was a bad season, and then they would go win 12. That was an average season, and if they got above 12, 13, or 14, that was a good season. And the consistency. And by the way, it's less is back. They had a first place schedule that whole time because they were winning division after division after division. If you're a good team, it takes care of itself. But Les was talking about the disservice of the schedule. They didn't beat anybody. How many times we hear that?
Yeah.
You just beat who's in front of you.
Right.
Good teams tend to do that.
I do think last year, if they'd have had some games that would have showed them the deficiencies that erupted in the Super Bowl a little more plainly, maybe they would have done something planning wise. Maybe they could have done something at the trade deadline if they needed to. I think even if you'd win 11 games this year instead of 13 or 14, maybe you'll find out more about yourself, if that makes any sense, playing better teams. And have a better sense of what you need to do in the playoffs. They kind of romped through the They did romp through the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. And, I just think, it's not a huge point, but I just don't think it's a bad thing to play good teams. If you hit a streak of good teams at a point where you have key injuries, sure, that can torpedo your season. That can take you out of contention for the first round bye and all that stuff. But, until you get there, there's no sense in really worrying about that. And
you can't legislate injuries. I'm with you there. Right. I mean, yeah. Tell me who's healthy in week 13. I'll tell you who's going to win, basically.
Right. But if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't use injuries and bad luck as an explanation because the Eagles don't ever cop to luck. When we give them credit for keeping their players healthy and having less injuries than everybody else, people say, well, you got a little lucky there. Well, there's no such thing as luck. So when you have a crop of injuries, you can't go, oh, we got bad luck. We just got killed by the injury bug. No. Either there's luck involved or there's not luck involved, one or the other. And the Eagles don't like to consider it lucky when they don't have injuries, so they can't lean on it if they do have injuries.
To be fair, and I'll throw this at last, I don't think they like that word, but Howie's acknowledged a couple of times, Les, that he knows there's probably going to be a regression to the mean when it comes to injuries. They were really healthy last year, and that's probably not going to happen again. But, yeah, they don't like that word, especially when you bring it up to the coaches. It's not luck.
What word would they use, do you believe, John, if they had a group of injuries, spate of injuries, as let's just described, at a key juncture of the season?
Regression to the mean.
Okay. Yeah. The luck thing mainly came up. Luck. Jody, the luck thing mainly came up last year in terms of turnovers. And they were dead wrong about that. I mean, they were praising themselves for getting all these, having this incredible turnover margin. And that just isn't, and getting a lot of turnovers is not something that you see sustainable season after season with same teams getting a lot of turnovers. That isn't how it works. Some of it is luck. Some of those balls just bounced into Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's hands. It was like a 5-game streak where he got a whole bunch of turnovers. Well, that doesn't always happen. You can take the teams that take care of the ball, that can be consistent year after year after year. And then you figure if your defense gets some turnovers, you have a good setup there. But to say that you're so conscious of getting the ball out that you're going to have a lot of turnovers every year, that is not the way. Historically, that is not the case for anybody.
Well, it's funny. They've admitted, on certain days, like they'll admit, like Jonathan Gannon would say, sacks come in bunches, turnovers come in bunches. You can't really control it. And then you would have, you bring up the luck word. Then they go, whoa, we teach this. And they do teach it. But guess what? So does everybody else. Right. I mean, There is a bit of randomness to turnovers, and that's sort of the word they like when it comes to turnovers is randomness. And there is. I mean, they do come to waves. I can't explain it. I don't think anybody can explain it. I think it helps when you have a bunch of, and you brought up the quarterback situation a little bit less with good quarterbacks affecting this defense. In some ways, that's baked in, right? It's more difficult to play better quarterbacks than poor quarterbacks. But also, especially young quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks, bad quarterbacks, they tend to hold on to the football. And what does that do? All of a sudden, the sack numbers come up. And you get to a Tom Brady or you get to a Patrick Mahomes who knows how to play, and the football's coming out on time, and the sacks come down. That part of it I kind of think is self-explanatory. But getting back to the schedule, I want to bring up a point that I liked about it less, because I think there's going to be struggles. I think people are overlooking the move of coordinators and shifts. And by the way, I think both guys were really impressive. But there's always a little bit of growing pains. And on this schedule, Les, the front side looks pretty easy.
Yeah.
And the really murderer's row portion will be on the back end when they've sort of gotten those hiccups out of the way, or in theory. Do you like that part of it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's what you want. Like you said, they've got to work through some things. The defense is really where all the change is. There's not a whole lot of change on offense. I mean, DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny are really the only two
right guard
things in the offense that are going to be any different.
Yeah, right guard, no Isaac Seumalo, but it's much more. The changes are much more extensive on the defensive side. No question about that.
I actually like the way the schedule laid out. We said this here on Birds last week. If you knew we were going to play and you knew how good the players were going to be, the question is what order they were going to come in, who was going to be up against what other team. John, I specifically like starting easy. You knew there at some point in the schedule there was going to be a grouping, call it a gauntlet, call it whatever you want, of games that were going to be tough to get through. And then it backs off again at the end. Easy early, toughen up through the gauntlet, test yourself, prove yourself you are a Super Bowl contender again. And then when you need to add wins at the end of the season just to secure home field advantage, you got them against the Cardinals and the Giants, a team that you owned last year. I think the NFL did the Eagles a solid, not a disrespect or a disinterest. I think that they lined their schedule up as a 18-game journey and test. I think they put it together the best way possible for the Eagles. How about you, Les?
I heard most of that. I think you're right about the way the schedule is constructed. I think that gauntlet's stretch is going to be really interesting, and they have some short weeks in there. It's going to be it'll be real interesting to see where they are when they get to that point in the season. I think they're going to be in real good shape going into it, and then we're going to, like you said, see. I think what I was trying to say a minute ago was the changes are on the defense. Obviously, the personnel changes and the coordinator change. I mean, there's a coordinator change on offense, but we all think Nick kind of runs the offense anyway. And maybe that won't be, especially since the personnel isn't changing on the offense. I don't think the offense will have a terrible time adjusting. But defense, new coordinator, slightly different emphasis probably, and a bunch of different players. And that's going to be very interesting. And after the Super Bowl, I think most fans are receptive to the idea of a different coordinator, certainly, and maybe some different players. And, it'll be interesting to see how they work all that out and what they look like on the field. After Sean Desai spoke to us for the first time last week and talked about the big thing I think everybody got was the wanting other teams to feel them, and that was an interesting emphasis from him. And he came back to it a couple times in his remarks.
Yeah. I think he was savvy, and I want to talk about Sean, but what you brought up about the offense, for the most part, I agree with Les. Obviously, only two significant, and I don't even think they're significant. Well, maybe Isaac. I think replacing Isaac Seumalo is going to be a bigger problem than people think. But I think they're going to be fine at running back. And I think Brian Johnson is a very good coach, and I think people saw him and he handled himself well. But I got to tell you, there was a pretty significant difference between Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen when it came to play calling. I think there's a feel to it. And Brian, by the way, I asked him that question. He said, yeah, it's part science, part art, I think he called it. And I like those phrases. And I think Shane was really good at it.
Okay.
Really good at it. And I think the assignment, and that's why I bring up Nick. I think he's better at it than Nick, to be honest. It's Nick's offense, as you mentioned. But I think Shane's a better play caller. I think we've already seen that. So I ask you, Les Bowen, why is it the assumption that, the play calling is going to be just as good with Brian Johnson? I still need to see that.
Yeah, I guess I need to see it. I didn't feel that strongly as you did about it with Steichen, but yeah, you could. I'm sure you're probably right. I think Nick's had some time now. We saw Nick as a play caller when he was very new to head coaching and the job, and Steichen did it for the last year and a half. I would hope Nick seems like a pretty bright guy. I would hope maybe he got a better feel during that time for what they need to do and how they need to do it. And I just think, Jalen Hurts is so far advanced now mentally and emotionally as a quarterback. I think he can provide a lot of input there. I don't see that as a problem, but it could be. I mean, sure, it could be. And, we'll just have to see. That's a point that I hadn't really probably thought nearly enough about, but there is a lot of change. I mean, that's, and you want to see change when you end up runner up, you don't come back with the same hand for the next season. That doesn't ever work. And the whole runner-up thing, in fact, is very problematic, historically for teams going into the next year. It's tough. And that's something they're going to have to get around and, work through.
Les, John and I are both fans of CEO head coaches, John even more so than me. I would prefer to have a CEO head coach if I got a good coach and he wants to call plays, the offensive team. I'm not going to not hire him because he doesn't do it a CEO way, but I do generally agree with John and his philosophy. CEO coaches are in a better position to coach the entire team than a guy who's going to bother himself with calling plays. We know that Nick turned to that a quarter of the way through season number 1, and the success of the Eagles has only grown since. So he'll be a CEO coach again this year. The first 2 years, it was with Jonathan Gannon in the position on the defensive side of the ball. And it seemed to guys like John, yourself, who covered the team, and even us from afar, that he went pretty much hands off. That it was Gannon's defense. He let Gannon do whatever he wanted. He wasn't looking over the shoulder at Gannon and continually talking to him on game days while plays are being called. Do you think Sean Desai is treated the same way from day one? He's new. He was Nick's hire, and Nick spoke glowingly of him. But when they get there on the field for the first game of the regular season, do you think that Desai is given the same reign over his defense that Gannon did going out the door?
Well, I sure hope so, because Nick isn't a defensive guy. And I think that's one of his talents is knowing what he knows and knowing what he doesn't know, and not trying to do things that he's not good at. And, I kind of think it was that way from day one with Gannon, and Gannon didn't have any great background as a defensive coordinator, that he had never been a defensive coordinator, So I got to think that it will be that way from day one. I sure hope it is, because I don't think we want Nick, really inserting himself on that side of the ball too much, other than as an emotional leader, as the guy who presides over things. I don't think you want Nick's I don't much want to see Nick's defensive strategies because I don't think he has them. And I just hope he does leave Sean Desai alone. I don't see a lot of difference between his hire and Gannon's hire in terms of, Nick was involved. Nick signed off on it. I would imagine it'll be Desai pretty much, and the leaders, the veteran leaders of the defense who set the tone.
Now, the scheme is going to be a big thing defensively, as you know, Les. And in theory, I mean, they're not going to change the base philosophy. You mentioned Nick is not a defensive guy. I agree with you. He sort of understands that, but he has those broad rules, and it starts with what he calls the double positive. So he wants to win the explosive play battle, and he wants to win the turnover battle.
Yeah.
And the explosive play is, I think, the problematic part for Eagles fans because they like aggression. And then, we all know this. We've been around this team for a long time. They want blitzing and they want a certain, and that's where I think Sean Desai hit a home run using the terms like palpable and saying, we want you to feel this defense and talking about toughness and grittiness. I think he hit a home run. We lost less. Hopefully we get him back. So from your perspective, Jody, I think he hit a home run, but I don't think it's all that meaningful. If we're using the same philosophy and same scheme, he's going to have the same issues Jonathan Gannon has. Hopefully he's better situationally, at least in the fan base's mind. Or is it just as simple as paying the lip service and saying the right things? Because I think he was already good at saying the right things.
I cut out for a little bit of that. I think I got the gist of what you said, John. But I don't think there was that much wrong with Gannon's scheme. It just didn't adjust well. If something happened, as we saw in the Super Bowl, when the Chiefs scored touchdowns on the same play, run to the other side, there has to be somebody has to understand what's going on there and not let it happen another time. That was my problem with Gannon. I didn't think his scheme was flawed so much. The scheme is one, as you know, that a lot of people use now.
Yes.
And
I would argue too many.
Yeah.
Because then you have that tipping point, right? Les, we saw it with cover 2 and Tony Dungy.
Yeah.
We saw it with cover 3 and Pete Carroll. You always have this tipping point. Oh, Big's defense works. Let's copy that.
Yeah.
And then all the quarterbacks see it every week and they figure it out.
That's exactly right. If you see it all the time, it's a lot easier to play against than it is when it's brand new. But, I don't think there's any reason to think the scheme is going to be real bad. But I think I just want to see, and I think the fans want to see, the ability to adjust, the ability to look at something that didn't work and figure that out instead of just standing there watching it, again and again, watching Andy Dalton complete 14 passes in a row or something, that just doesn't have to happen, I don't think. And I think that's what I'm looking for from Sean Desai more than anything else, really.
All right, let me ask one more defensive question here. And this may be overly analytical, and I like analytics. I'm not a slave to analytics like some people are, but I don't dismiss them either. But the true analytics of last year, regular season, if you want to add in the players, we can, because we know what happened in the Super Bowl. The Eagles were the number one pass defense. If you're using the metric of yards allowed per game, they were the number one pass defense in the NFL. They were the 17th defense against the run. If I'm any Eagle opponent, the first thing I'm doing before the game starts is, we got to run the ball early because we can run the ball against the Eagles. Teams prove they could run the ball against the Eagles. If we're going to come in here and try and pass the ball against the Eagles, we're probably swimming upstream. Have the Eagles done enough this offseason to improve their defense against the run, in your estimation, Les?
Boy, that's a real good question. I'm not sure they have. They've done a few things. The linebacker position, which I think you guys were talking about when I came on the show, is kind of crucial to that. And I don't know what what they're going to look like at linebacker right now. I think there might be a piece still. I don't know about Patrick Queen, but I think there might be a piece still missing there. To me,
Jacoby better be good. I'll say that. He better be what
Yeah.
everybody thinks he is. Because if
that's
he's not,
that's a big, that's
Yeah.
a big thing with me. There's all this assumption about
Yeah.
these guys that didn't, and it's not their fault they didn't play a
No.
lot. They run a
No.
Super Bowl team, but they didn't play a lot. And you can't just say, "Oh, he's great." That is going to be very interesting to see. I'm of two minds when it comes to defending the run. Point one is, if you have the best offense in the NFL, which they very might well have, then sure, run against them. You're not going to score points nearly as quickly as they will. So yeah. But the other point is, and I think we saw this some last year, if it's always 2nd and 3 or 3rd and 1, then you're not going to get a lot of stops. You're not going to get off the field very easy. And that's the downside of not being very good against the run, is you set the offense of the opposing team up in manageable situations all the time. That's going to be a big question, is whether they've done enough to stop the run. And I don't have any idea at this point. I really don't.
Well, I'm going to ask you, last one from me, at Les Bowen on Twitter. Make sure you follow Les there. Still doing some things. Check out his schedule thoughts over at his Facebook page.
And also, I might have, look for an announcement. I might have a podcast with my name on it coming up.
Oh, very nice.
Nice. Probably not, Jody and I are probably not big enough names, but we'll gladly join if you need somebody less.
Yeah, you're.
Here's my question about the Eagles and what Jody brought up in the running game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think they want to stop the run. I mean, we talked about explosive plays, right? How do they stop explosive plays? They're always top 5 in stopping explosive plays. They put an extra body. They always had play with light boxes. It's basically, hey, Jordan Davis, go out and take up a bunch of blockers, and they don't really care about stopping the run. Is that just the modern NFL, or is it a blind spot?
It is the modern NFL, but I think in their situation, what I was alluding to before about if you're so bad at stopping the run that every first down run gets 6 or 7 yards, I don't think that's the modern NFL. I think you have to do something about that, because you can't get your high-powered offense on the field if the other team always has the ball. And I think they get into that sometimes, and they have that problem. And usually it resolves itself, but I would like to see them, become less of a real. The 7-yard runs aren't explosive plays, but you put enough of them together, and they're significant plays. And I would like to see them just a little bit better. I don't think they have to stone the run. I don't think they have to be first in the league against the run. But Jody mentioned 17th. I think like 12th would be a good place to do, or 10th, somewhere where you can, hang your hat on, again, being able to get off the field. You need to get off the field. And if you can't do that, I think you're in a little bit of trouble, even in the modern NFL.
And I might be comparing apples and oranges here, but I think we will see today or tomorrow, next 24, 48 hours, a massive reaction to the 76ers losing one game. Yeah. It was 3-3 going into game number 7. They lost that game. You watch what happens to this organization because they lost that game. We didn't get any of that with the Super Bowl. Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th-round draft pick, rushed for more than 5 yards per carry in the Super Bowl. And if you don't think he was a main contributor to the Eagles losing the Super Bowl, then you didn't pay good enough attention to that game. But it stopped the run. Who stops the run in the NFL anymore? Why do we worry about that? Linebacker.
Well, they certainly. Linebacker. I think everybody understood that they lost the game because they couldn't get off the field on that last drive. Whether you key it to stopping the run or stopping Patrick Mahomes, they had to do something to get some kind of a stop in the second half. Right. But yeah, the Sixers situation, very, very different. They lost game 6 and game 7. and they lost Game 7 in a disgraceful manner. The Eagles didn't. The Eagles lost by 3 and couldn't get the ball back. That was a little different than what we saw yesterday.
Plus, the Sixers have been doing Groundhog Day. They lose the same way every year. They lose
in the same round.
Can't close games, same round. They lose to. I brought it up with Charity. Kawhi Leonard, Trey Young, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tate. They lose to closers because they don't have a closer.
Because they don't have a closer. Yes, you're exactly right. They don't have the leadership. I mean, that's it in right down. I don't know if it's coaching. Probably a little bit of coaching, but I think we saw with the Flyers and Tortorella that the coach can't really be the leader. You can bring the guy in that demands that, but unless you have it in the room, it's not manifested in the games, and they just don't have leadership.
Yeah, my point is on the Eagles in the Super Bowl. You're right; it's different because the Sixers have a history, and this was the first Eagle trip back to the Super Bowl in a couple of years. Last time they went, they won. If I had told you ahead of time they would hold Patrick Mahomes to under 190 yards passing in the Super Bowl, do you like
you would have taken that?
Do you like your chances?
Yeah.
I think 100 out of 100 Eagle fans would raise their hands and say, yes, I'll take that. Thank you very much. Well, guess what? He threw for under 190 yards and Eagles lost the game. And I'm telling you that was in large part, not only part, but large part to the fact that they couldn't stop Isaiah Pacheco. So if they want to sign on to it's the new NFL, who the hell, I think you phrased it, John. I don't think they care about stopping the run. I would raise my hand and go, I am sorry, I disagree with that. Stopping the run is something you need to do. Maybe not overburden yourself and have 6 linebackers on the field at once, but it's
there's a little hyperbole. There's a little hyperbole there. They don't want to be 32nd in the NFL, giving up there's a little bit of embellishment for effect. But yeah, I don't think it's one of their top levels of importance is how I would describe it.
Here's the way I would evaluate the Eagles at this stage. They haven't prioritized it enough. If you say it's not ever going to be a priority, numero uno, I'll buy that. But they have, for me, basically.
Well, I agree. Ball linebacker. I think they've taken it too far. I think they shouldn't value the position as a whole when compared to other positions. But I think they've taken it too far. I think they can, just throw whatever and be effective enough.
So Les Bowen, last question. Before they report for camp, let's use the opening day of camp demarcation. Will the Eagles upgrade the off-ball linebacker position?
It can happen in the spring. It can happen during camp. It can happen right before the season, as happened with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the safety position last year. I don't want to pin it to before camp. I don't know that it'll happen before, but I think it will happen. I do think there'll be something else. There is another piece to be added there, and I don't know if it'll be, a piece that ends up making a huge difference or not. We all thought Kazir White was going to make a huge difference, and early in the season he did, and later in the season, it was kind of like, yeah. So there's another veteran to be added there. I think I won't be shocked, but I'll be surprised if that isn't the case.
Any hints on the new podcast, Les? Can you give us more coming?
I signed something, but it's a new thing. There's going to be different people doing podcasts for this group, and I'm going to be doing one of them. I think we're going to call it Bowen on the Birds.
Nice.
And it's going to be me talking pretty much right in the early going, but we'll see.
Nice. Bowen on the Birds. We've gotten plenty of Bowen on the Birds. We're always happy when Les can give us some time. And who knows? Maybe we'll be on Bowen on the Birds at one point, Jody.
I hope my internet works better for that.
You better get that cleared up. Les, great stuff. Always a pleasure, bud. Yes, and all you have to do is ask. John and I owe you. So if you need a little segment covered on Bowen on the Birds, McMullen and McDonald will be there for you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Les. Appreciate it.
Bowen here with us on Birds 365, which, by the way, can we get Kaiser White back?
I know.
As different as his first half might have been to his second half, and I think there was a drop-off. I don't think it was as drastic as what Les just suggested, but Oh, I'd take Kaiser White back in a hurry here if they could get their hands back on him.
I mean, and that's the kind of player I'm talking about. I don't need a great. I mean, that's when I say I think the Eagles have taken it too far. I think, you know, if you get me Kaiser White level of production, I can deal with it. But if you're starting to go to Nicholas Morrow level, I can't deal with it. So again, we were talking about demarcation lines. That's a demarcation line for me. Like, I can't line up with Nicholas Morrow as my weak side linebacker. I can line up with Kaiser White. Not a great player, but I can do it. You'd like to have a star at every position, but that's not realistic. And I do think, look, I think it's more important to value other positions. I think the Eagles are right for the most part, but I think they've taken it too far at all-ball linebacker. Too far.
Still need to upgrade that position. We agree on that. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. We still got an hour to go here on Birds 365. Jeff Kerr, Mr. NFL from CBSSports.com, is going to join us in about 20 minutes. Stay with us.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
Hi everybody, my name is Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. The week after the schedule release, we're still making notes of the schedule they've got coming up this year, Philadelphia Eagles. Here was one thing that kind of jumped out on me, John, and I haven't had a chance to go through it week in and week out. We could do it quickly, I guess, here now if you wanted to. There was some fear here in Philadelphia and with the other top teams in the NFL, Kansas City, San Francisco, Buffalo, Cincinnati. We all know who were the teams that went deep into the playoffs last year and are at least now thought to be of that level going into the 2023 season. That with the Amazon Thursday night schedule, there was conversations leading up to the owners' meetings during this offseason that Amazon was looking to get some flexibility in their schedule to be able to cherry pick games late in the year. NFL wasn't ready to go there, but they did float this, hey, maybe we'll ask some of the good teams to play twice on a Thursday night, because the schedule has been for Thursday nights, even before Prime came into the picture. Amazon on other networks, including the NFL Network, everybody gets one game. Everybody's tasked to play on a Thursday night. We're going to spread the difficulty of a Thursday night game around evenly to the league. They did say, well, they would consider using teams more than once on a Thursday night. Well, who was going to get picked for that? The Philadelphia Eagles, because they are a primetime team, major market, superstar quarterback after this past year. Eagles get Thursday night out of the way by week number 2, and then it's over and done with. So they weren't one of the teams, and I don't even know who were the teams. I'm sorry that I haven't gone through the schedule yet. If you did, tell me who it was, who did get picked to go twice on Thursday night. You positive or negative that the Eagles only have to play once and they get over and done with by week 2 of the season?
Yeah, that seems to have been overblown. I think it had more to do with the Thanksgiving games to get those teams in there twice, because they're obviously Thursday games. But for the Thursday night, traditional Thursday night games, so take Thanksgiving out of the equation, I think it's best case scenario because you get done with it early. And it's a really, in my estimation, a really easy spot for the Eagles. You never want to play on a short week. And, the fact that they have to open up, 4:25, I guess you prefer a 1:00 game. I always prefer a 1:00 game, but nonetheless, you don't have a lot of time, but you're at home. The team coming in is not a West Coast team, but a Midwest team. It's a decent trip for them, Minnesota. And then, they had to open up the Eagles home opening schedule game last year, and they got trounced. I think it's a really good spot, and then you get it over with. And it's over. I think there's a lot of good things to like about this schedule. Obviously, it's tougher, but as Les pointed out, you're a first place team. You're playing a first place schedule. You're always that way. And if you're a good team, it'll take care of itself. But as far as the situations, I always look for themes more than games, because I don't know who's going to be healthy on a particular week. I think there's a lot of good themes in this schedule, and it starts out with things like that early. I mentioned a couple times, looks pretty easy on paper. At New England, Minnesota, at Tampa Bay, Washington, at Rams. They're a better team. They're a better team than all those teams, Joe.
Oh yeah.
So they have a chance to go through those hiccups of new coordinators, getting the younger players, the Nakobe Deans, the Cam Jurgens. Jordan Davis is up to speed. And then all of a sudden, hopefully, they get some of those hiccups out of the way and they're ready to go for post-bye, which is at Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, at Dallas, at Seattle. I think it's good overall.
And the thing that I can sign on with if I'm an Eagle fan is, and when you look at analytics / trends in the NFL, some of them make a tremendous amount of sense. Some of them make no sense whatsoever, and you chalk it up to coincidence. And then there are ones that I really can't figure out. So I am going to, and I'm readily admitting ahead of time, I'm asking a guy who's already stated his opinion on a player. How do you explain the fact that Kirk Cousins sucks at night? He's a pretty damn good quarterback. He's a numbers getter when the sun's up, but at night he fades like a flower that needs those rays and just crumbles and dies. He is a bad primetime quarterback, And I just can't come up with a reason for it. In comparison to when the sun's up, Kirk Cousins, as compared to when the sun's down, Kirk Cousins, the two things do not equate. There is just such a diametrically opposite difference to it. I can't understand it. You got any explanation why primetime Kurt is the way he is?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I think he's 2-9. I'm just looking it up real quick. He's usually playing better teams. He's had actually a lot of good games on prime times, but they're playing a better team and they lose, and everybody looks at the win-loss record. When he was in Washington, same thing as Minnesota. Minnesota plays Green Bay a lot in prime time. Typically, Green Bay's better than Minnesota, and they get beat. Almost, it's sort of like Dallas, not now because obviously it's Jordan Love, but it's sort of like a mini version of Dallas, Philadelphia. They always play in prime time. One game, they always play in prime time. It's been going. Same thing with Vikings and Green Bay. Typically, throughout the Rodgers era, Green Bay's beaten up on the Vikings, and you lose games. Chicago, again, not the current Chicago. The Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack Chicago. Vikings always had the terrible offensive line. They couldn't block Akeem Hicks for years. They couldn't block the guy. It's just not. You know what the most astonishing point of Kirk Cousins' career is? That he's there every week, because that guy gets beaten like a drum.
Yeah, he's availability is one of his best abilities.
Yeah. Akeem Hicks, they couldn't block him. So it's mainly just they're playing better teams, and they get beat in high-profile situations because they always want good teams, and they're a good team, but they're typically not as good as the teams they're playing. That's the most simple explanation. Yeah, and that would be. I don't think it's anything more than that. He's had good games in prime time, and he's only won 2 of them. I think it was 0-7 or something like that before he won one. And Washington even more so, because Washington would be playing, Dallas or Philadelphia, and they were better. I mean, that's people put too much. Wins and losses are not a quarterback stat. We talk about analytics. Wins and losses are not a quarterback stats. Now, there's certain guys that win games and sort of, I think, mess it up for everybody. Well, if Tom Brady can do it, why can't so-and-so do it? Well, nobody's saying Kirk Cousins is Tom Brady. Tom Brady might be the greatest football player that ever lived. He's in the conversation. He's on the short list, certainly. Or even a guy I brought up, Peyton Manning. Nobody's saying these guys are in a stratosphere, and they elevate everybody around them. Most quarterbacks need some help. Kirk Cousins is in that category. But my assumption, and I heard this from a scout, so I stole it. When I asked him about Kirk, he's probably better than your quarterback. That's how he described him. He's a really good player, but he's not a superstar player.
And because he's not a superstar player in Philadelphia, week number 2, despite the fact that some people may say it's unfair for the Eagles to be asked to play a Thursday night game, they should be given deference because they're play the game, beat Kirk Cousins, who John says will probably put up some stats on that given night, except last year, Thursday night here, he didn't put many stats up against the Eagles defense at all. But he may put some stats up that go beat them. That's what the Eagles have to do if they are a better team, and they were last year, close record-wise during the regular season, but the Vikings got pushed out of the playoffs easily by the Giants week 1, where the Eagles ended up in the Super Bowl. Win the game. Don't complain about it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't make a bigger deal about it. They shouldn't be tasked to play Thursday night early. Just win the game. You're a better team than the Vikings. Get it done. Move on from Kirk Cousins, who may or may not put stats up on primetime games. The Vikings, the team he's quarterbacking, seem to come up short in those situations. And that's
by the way, I just pulled up. I found his primetime stats. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games with over 100% passer rating. I mean, which is not the be all end all. I mean, you can
6 out of, what did you say, 11?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's more good than bad.
So I mean, when you're paying, one of them's Green Bay, as I mentioned. He had 30 for 40 against the Eagles, 75%, 303 yards. I mean, he's just typically playing better teams. He's
last year. Are you talking about?
No, this was when he was with Washington as a primetime game. He's typically playing. Here's the problem with good quarterbacks. They make their teams a little bit better, but they're not good enough. And they're playing, when you get to prime time, you're playing, who are we talking about? Kansas City, Philadelphia, Dallas to a certain extent, which has been a good regular season team, but not a good playoff team. When they're playing these teams, they're not as good. They're not as good as those teams. When they play the Eagles on prime time, the Eagles are better. And he's going to lose the game. And people are going, well, Kirk Cousins again. Well, his team isn't as good as the team he's facing. It's pretty much the simple explanation, I would say.
Well, and if you tell me 6 out of 11, that's pretty good. Your argument holds water that they're losing the games more so because of other things than Kirk Cousins.
Well, he's had some bad ones. He had a 58.8 rating against Green Bay once. He had a 69.3 rating against those Bears. I mentioned the Akeem Hicks Bears, which they couldn't block. He had a 51.1 rating, his worst game of the year against the Eagles last year. Well, was that last year? That wasn't prime time.
Yeah, they played on Thursday night last year.
2022. Yeah. So he had a 51 point. Yeah, he got destroyed in that game. So he's had some bad ones too. But I mean, he's had a lot of good games and he hasn't won them either.
Let's see if that holds water this year. I would say, well, you're looking at a 50-50 split. They have 5 primetime games to the Vikings as of right now. Eagles, tough opponent. Week 7, San Francisco, tough opponent.
0-2.
And again, this is projection. We're going off what they did last year and judging them on that.
No, those are good opponents, though.
Right.
Week
10, Bears.
Yeah, they should win that game.
You should be able to win that game, right? And what's their other primetime game? Week 17 at Green Bay, no Aaron Rodgers.
Should win that game. Even at Green Bay, they're a better team. So those are the games he should be like.
Oh, and one other, excuse me, let me add this one. Week 11, Denver, who's coming off a below 500 season. So they got 5 primetime games this year, 2 of which you go, yeah, but Cousins shouldn't win them because they're in against a tougher opponent. 3 of which you say going in, yeah, they should be able to win that game because they're the better team.
And I think those are the 3 games you should judge him on in prime time. If he lays an egg in those games, I'm with you. You go shat upon him. But if he plays well and loses to the Eagles and the Niners, and people still,
All right, but in that same vein, let's say he plays against the Eagles and we agree that they should lose to the Eagles. Eagles are a better team. But he plays to a 50 quarterback rating. He didn't get a free pass for that because they were a lesser team.
That's
coming
a bad game. There's
the opponent. You're ranking the opponent, but then you also have to rank the performance.
No, he had a bad game. He sort of, that Eagles game was sort of like the Sixers in Boston. He just gave up and started throwing the ball up for grabs to Jefferson. And he deserved, that was a crappy game. That was probably his worst game of the season. If somebody plays poorly, I'm the person in line to say they played poorly. He played really poorly here in Philadelphia. Now the Eagles had a lot to do with it because they got on him early. He was uncomfortable. And that's how you have to deal with quarterbacks like that. Because if you let him set his feet and get comfortable, you know, he's really accurate. He's going to hurt you. So, I mean, the Eagles deserve a lot of credit for that.
And week 2 is the exact same spot. They ambushed Kirk Cousins last year. They have to do it again on a Thursday night back here in Philadelphia. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. We are the Mac and Mac Birds 365. Guys, we are hoping to get Jeff Kerr of CBS Sports up to join us next here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac and Mac here on Birds 365, a Monday kickoff to the week. We're lucky enough to get Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports on with us. Jeff, here's my first question. Which has a better chance of happening in the next 48 hours? Joshua Harris sitting down, having a meaningful conversation with Roger Goodell about buying the Commanders, or Joshua Harris sitting down to let Sixers Nation know Doc Rivers' services are no longer needed? Where will Josh Harris's attention be?
Well, I think right now he cares more about the Commanders, but I will say this: he probably should be doing both. I'm not ready to fully blame Doc Rivers for all this shit, although he will get fired. He should get fired, but I'm still frustrated.
Players, man. Players.
Exactly. I'm still frustrated over just the lack of self-awareness Joel Embiid and James Harden have toward the task at hand. It's incredible how they play in a city like Philadelphia that has Bryce Harper, that has Jalen Hurts. I mean, Bryce Harper's fighting a no-name pitcher who's only been in Major League Baseball for 5 months in a 4-0 game in the middle of May. And Joel Embiid sitting here sulking over another second-round playoff exit in the biggest game of his life. I'll never understand it.
Yeah. I think, and Jeff's a big Sixers guy. I think it's a good thing a lot of Sixers fans had to have a come to Jesus moment about Joel Embiid because he's tremendously talented. He's tremendously gifted. But how do you win the way they play basketball in the modern NBA? That's the question. That's the question that needs to be answered. And too few people were willing to ask it because, oh, he's the MVP. He's this, he's that. Yeah. But is that the goal? 50 win? Because you're going to win 50. He's going to be in the MVP conversation. But until he accepts a lesser role late in games, what can Doc Rivers do? I mean, one of the things that brushed me, and you're a Penn State guy as well, I always go back to Penn State, Ohio State, because I got in a back and forth with a pretty famous college football writer. And it was that Trace McSorley, you probably remember it. I think it was a 4th and 4, 4th and 5 type play. So games on the line.
4th and 5. Yep,
yeah.
I know exactly where you're going.
And they ran an RPO and it got blown up. And everybody's like, I'm like, that's what James Franklin practices all day, every day. That's their bread and butter. And then in the biggest spot against a team that they're trying to upset and is probably better and more talented, you want them to pull out some Bill Walsh masterpiece out of his what. Doesn't work that way. So bringing it back to the Sixers, Jeff, you can't play one way the entire season and then say, oh, in the biggest moment, completely change. They built their whole team around this particular player. He can't close games. Something's got to change.
And that's what's frustrating about it. So one of the arguments I get into a lot of people is, well, Jokic is a winning player. It's this whole Jokic and Embiid thing. By the way, I love both of them. They're great players. But I'm like, hold on a second. Jokic has a generational type player in Jamal Murray, too, who's pretty good. And you got to worry about stopping Jamal Murray. And if you watch Nuggets games, the offense actually flows through Murray, but you have Jokic there to make the plays he makes. And Jokic is a 2-time MVP for a reason. And is Jokic 1B? In the playoffs, he is. And you see these triple-double. Embiid needs to be a 1B, but the thing is, I don't think Embiid has that killer instinct that Jokic had. Jokic says, we're going to finish off this team, and I'm going to put up 39, 12, and 10, or whatever he puts come hell to high water. And Joel Embiid just rather blame Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey.
It's always somebody else's fault.
It's always somebody.
By the way, I'll ask Jeff Kerr and Jody McDonald this. How can you let Marcus Smart, how could you let Al Horford, never mind Marcus Smart or Malcolm Brogdon earlier in the series, push you off your spots? Forget about Brogdon and Smart. He's getting the ball 16 feet away from the basket with Marcus Smart on him. That's embarrassing.
And you let Marcus Smart flop. That's the worst part. Like, you should just run him over and dunk the ball every single time.
Shaq would have. They would never do that. They would never do that. They feel comfortable enough. Hey, Malcolm Brogdon, go check Embiid for 3 minutes. He's not going to do anything. Smart, go waste a foul.
Yeah, the problem is he's not Jokic. And at times he tries to be Jokic, and he's just not Jokic. He doesn't have the passing ability that Jokic has. So they do play him a little bit further away from the basket. You talk about the NBA not being what it used to be. Playing back to the basket center doesn't happen anywhere. A couple of possessions a game, that's it. And nobody would want Embiid to do that.
By the way, Jody, I saw Marcus Smart do it. There are guys who can back people
You saw
down.
Marcus Smart do what? Play continuously back to the basket?
No, he would post people up. He would post up Maxey when he got him in a spot, and
the post-up game still exists. The post-up game still exists.
How many possessions a game is
a handful of possessions a game, but a handful of meaningful possessions. That's the point. Guys can do it. I agree with you. It's mainly become a 3-point shooting game, but there are guys who post up and guys who do it well. I go back to Mark Jackson. He was doing the game play by play. He was tremendous at that as a guard.
Yeah, it's 20 years ago now.
Used to post up Allen Iverson all the time. Even guards can do it.
Jason Tatum does it.
Yeah, Tatum does it. Yeah. Tatum does it all the time. There are guys who can do it, Jody. It's not as impactful as it once was, but there are guys who do it.
A handful of possessions a game. That's
Meaningful
all it is, and that's why Embiid likes to get out onto the perimeter because he gets his hand. Embiid gets his handful of post-up plays a game. He's pretty damn successful with it, but he's got to be able to do more than he did. Certainly,
that series changed when Joe Mazzulla decided to play Robert Williams in that starting lineup. And I thought the Sixers spacing was going to be tremendous. But Doc Rivers never made the adjustment. It's Boston basically dared Joel Embiid to make those elbow jumpers and PJ Tucker wide open in the corner, and they just couldn't fall. And
by the way, that's another issue I have. If he wants to be out on the wing, great. But be decisive. Take the elbow jumper. Take it.
It was there. It was there. I don't know what happened.
But he's always hesitating. Then he puts the ball on the floor. Then he's a turnover waiting to happen. Yeah, there's a lot of issues there. A lot of issues that go far beyond Doc Rivers.
And it was always more than Ben Simmons. I know he was the scapegoat. I'm not a Ben Simmons fan. He's another loser, losing attitude. I saw his Instagram post yesterday. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, shut up. You're making $72 million on your couch. You don't even want to play basketball. But I just got tired of the whole, if Jimmy Butler was here, they didn't win with Jimmy Butler either. Jimmy Butler had his problems in the fourth quarter of that game against the Toronto Raptors. You know, there's been one constant through this entire thing, and that's Joel Embiid.
Yeah, but if Jimmy Butler takes out the Celtics this next round, you're going to have to listen to it again, Kerr. We should have kept Jimmy Butler. If he does what the Sixers couldn't do, then you got to acknowledge that.
Yeah, that Heat team is terrible. That is a bad Heat team. I'm telling you right now. I think the Celtics beat that team.
Heat team that's in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Because they got a draw. They got a lucky draw. They beat.
Hey, you know who got a lucky draw? The Sixers, but they couldn't take advantage of it because they would be, if they just close out at home, they're playing those Miami Heat to go to the NBA Finals.
And I think they
didn't take advantage.
I'll say that the four
they
best
didn't take
teams,
advantage of it.
The four best teams in the NBA were, in no order, Denver, Milwaukee, Boston, the Sixers. Two of them played each other in the second round.
That's the way the regular season went, but we're finding out the postseason is different. All right, I answered the Joshua Harris question to get your comment about the Commanders, not to get off onto a Sixers tangent. I've been reading that the way the NFL usually does business on taking new owners in, the benchmarks they have to hit, number of partners, number of cash, amount to cover salaries and put money in escrow to give guaranteed contracts and the like. The group that's buying the Commanders aren't necessarily checking all the boxes, that there are some financial questions, but they're so desperate to get Dan Snyder out the door that they're willing to compromise on some of these situations with the new group looking to buy the Commanders. Are you hearing the same thing?
You know, the only thing I've heard, at least from the Commanders' standpoint, is I guess Josh Harris and them are talking about potentially building a new stadium in Maryland again, which I thought that was the reason why a lot of people soured on the Commanders franchise in the first place outside of Dan Snyder, is they did not want to be in Maryland. They want to be – I've heard personally that Northern Virginia is a very likely destination, or they would welcome – Northern Virginia will welcome them. But where in Northern Virginia is going to be the question. That's where I'm curious to see when this sale is finalized, you know, how quickly can they get out of FedEx Field? How quickly can they get a new practice facility and training facility? I think that's goal number one for the Commanders outside of getting rid of Dan Snyder. But I don't know, Jody. I kind of agree with you. I feel like it's not like when the Walton family bought the Broncos. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two issues. What Jody brought up is part of it. They just want to get Daniel Snyder out there, but there aren't a lot of people. There aren't a lot of families like the Walton family. So when you start to get up at $6 billion, people are going to have to take on partners, even really, really rich people, and they're going to have to change the way they do business because there's not going to be enough people to own these teams because there's only so many Jeff Bezoses of the world. And that's part of the problem. These organizations, they're getting too expensive, and very few people are financially well-heeled enough to do it by themselves or with very few minority partners. Josh Harris, perfect example. The guy's extraordinarily rich, but he's not rich enough.
John, do you think Josh Harris might sell one of his teams to help pay for the Commanders?
Yeah, I don't think he cares. I mean, like, I know a lot of people are, how could you own the Commanders and own the Sixers, or own the Devils and own the Sixers? He doesn't care. He's trying to make money. And obviously the NFL is a better way to do that than the NBA or the NHL. So if he needs to, yeah. I don't think it would necessarily be a bad thing, but you always have, it could be worse. I always say about Jared, he's not a good owner, but he's not a bad owner. And
he's better
and
Daniel Snyder.
Yeah, you can get a bad owner. Exactly. Perfect example, Daniel Snyder. I wanted to run what I want to run what I don't know if you saw what Ryan Poles said about Jalen Carter on Chicago radio, Jeff. I thought it was interesting because I thought he told the truth, and it was basically I pulled up the quote, so I want to read it to you guys and get both your thoughts. I will say that our culture is important, and this is Ryan Poles. I'll say that we know where our roster is right now and what it can handle, what it can handle. I think that's part of being intelligent in this space, is knowing your locker room and where it's at. I'm happy we made the decision that we made, specifically on Jalen. I think he went to a fantastic place that has their cement dry and their foundation. A lot of Eagles fans took this as an affront. I thought he was complimenting.
It's a compliment.
It's a compliment.
That's a stone cold compliment to the Eagles.
Yeah.
In fact, this is I thought, just based on you reading that. So what I'm getting from Ryan Poles is we are not in that position to draft a player.
Yeah,
like
we're
Jalen
not strong
Carter.
enough to take a potential issue on.
Yeah, but the Eagles
which is
are.
a compliment. Yes.
Yeah, it's a compliment to the Eagles and what they're doing. I think that's why a lot of people love the Eagles doing what they did and getting Jalen Carter, because their locker room is built for that. I mean, you're seeing that. Like, I just talked to Kaylee Ringo over the weekend, and I can't believe how mature this guy is and what he's been through.
Yeah. So Nolan Smith too. All this, except for Jalen. All the Georgia guys are like unbelievable. It's a testament to Kirby Smart, N'Kobe Dean, Jordan Davis as well. Jalen Carter, I'm talking about, by the way, not Jalen Hurts. Jalen Carter, I think there's some maturity issues. I think that's fair to say, but he's 22 years old.
He's in the right situation too. He's with his guys, like guys he trusts, and it's going to make life for him in the NFL easier. That's why I love the Nolans. They were able to get him and Kaylee Ringo, and he already knows Jordan Davis. He knows N'Kobe Dean. I mean, I think he's going to be fine here. I really do. There's going to be obviously stories that come out just based on what happened in January, but that's life in the NFL.
Well, he's already got civil suits, and it's not going away anytime soon. But I think the Eagles are strong enough to handle it, and other teams, like if I'm Chicago and I have the number 1 overall pick and none of this happens, I'm taking Jalen Carter at number 1. And then they get on the back end, they trade down because they decide they want to keep their quarterback. So they don't want a quarterback. That makes sense. Then they get another shot at him because they could have taken the kid at 9.
That's what I thought they were going to do. I'm like, well, we just traded down from 1 to 9. We probably would have taken them at 1.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised they kind of let the Eagles trade up one spot together. But hey, they had their plans, and Ryan Poles, it's an honest answer. It's not an insult that Jalen Carter, the Eagles, or anybody.
Yeah, I thought it was very honest. They're not in a position to take him.
Here's one of my concerns about Jalen Carter. And again, I'm going apples and oranges, and I'm dragging the NBA back into it, so I apologize in advance. John Morant was the second pick in the draft, and the Memphis Grizzlies thought they got a generational talent that
They did.
was going to lift
They
the
did.
organization.
They did get one.
And it did. They did. And they got tremendous immediate success because of it. Now the kid's NBA career sits in the balance because not only did he make a mistake, he doubled down on the mistake after coming out and said, I've learned my lesson and take all responsibilities, and he does the same exact thing again.
Did the Grizzlies ban the guy he had the Instagram post with from their games because he shot a laser pointer at someone on the Pacers?
They didn't ban him from his car where they shot the second Instagram post, so you can only do so much if you're the team. It comes back to the young man himself, and John Morant proved that he doesn't want to exercise the problems that he has in his life. We don't know if Jalen Carter will do that or not. We certainly believe that's the case. We hope that's the case. We believe that the very good Eagle locker room with veteran leaders will try and guide him in that direction. I'm sure the Memphis Grizzlies had people that they thought were helping guide John Morant too. And now they're going to be without his services for however many long
But I also think the Eagles
year.
get the benefit of the doubt here because of the culture they've installed. And that's where the Ryan Poles comments come in. We believe they can handle this. They believe they can handle this. They told you this, John McMullen. They told me this. They told us all this. Like, they're willing to take this on. And
to Jody's point, they might be wrong. And it might not work out because, it really is ultimately up to the person because you can't follow and keep tabs on somebody 24/7.
That's what you're talking about.
Especially from June to late July? Those 6 weeks are crucial.
So ultimately, I'm not saying it couldn't go wrong. It could go wrong. But my overriding point in the Jalen Carter situation, and there's a lot of teams that don't feel comfortable taking on that challenge. The Eagles do. And if it works, it could be a home run. And other teams just can't do that. They can't take the swing. If you don't get in the batter's box to take the swing, you can't hit the home run. And there's certain teams that can't even get in the batter's box. I think that's a big advantage to the Eagles.
What was the Big Daddy Graham slogan, Jody? Man, I can't win if you don't play.
Yeah, Big Daddy used to say that all the time. Which, as John just said, you give the Eagles credit because they're always looking for a game. They're ready to take some chances. Like now, if it works, it works. Great. That's a major advantage for the Eagles. But if the young man blows up, then we're going to go, yeah, you took too many swings early. You should have taken a couple pitches before you got back in and swung for the fences. Jalen Carter's a swing for the fence, and it's either going to be a 3-run homer or it's going to be an easy out because he's not capable of getting on the field. All right, Jeff, we haven't talked to you at all about the Eagles schedule. John and I both agree people make too much out of it, but it's the talking point for right now in the season with most of free agency done and before camps open up. Do you like the way the Eagles schedule lays out this year for potential success for the Eagles?
McMullen, were you the one who said they'll start 5-0?
They should, yeah.
They should, yeah. I agree with you. I think people are making way too big of a deal the first week. Oh, they're playing the Patriots on Tom Brady, whatever day it is, retirement day, or
I don't like that spot, but I think and Jody knows from last year, I was talking that up for weeks. I thought it was going to be a tougher game than people thought. I ended up right, but they persevered and got out of Detroit with a win. Same thing here with New England. Look, I don't like to open up anybody's home opener because everybody's fired up. There's a little more juice, a little more unless Joel Embiid's going to play. Guys are going to fight to the last minute and scratch and claw. But ultimately, the Eagles got significantly more talent, and they should be able to persevere and get out of there with a win. And then I think all of a sudden, if they do that, then he can kind of turn the corner. Minnesota's not going to be an issue on Thursday night. Tampa might be the worst team on the schedule or second worst, Arizona. Washington's going to be terrible early with Sam Howell. The Rams are in complete rebuilding mode. And then I think you're you might have some issues with Jody's Jets and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. And you get the gauntlet. The gauntlet's coming. And I mean, look at this though. You got Cowboys before the bye. And you got Chiefs after the bye. Oh, by the way, Andy Reid's on the bye when he plays the Eagles too. So I don't like that. Then you got Buffalo on a short week. I don't care if it's at home or not. The Bills are still really good. And you got the 49ers who make more excuses than the Sixers, quite frankly. Then you got
Dallas at Dallas.
Dallas at Dallas.
And then Seattle.
At Seattle, where they haven't won since, I think, 2008. Whew, man.
By the way, Jeff, I think that's the toughest spot in the whole schedule, at Seattle.
I agree with you. They don't win there. They just don't. Oh, and Seattle's pretty good, and they got better. I will agree with John Lynch. He said, yeah, we're trying to pay attention to that other team in the NFC West. And he mentioned Seattle later, but he said, did you guys see what the Seahawks did this all season? Like, they had a really good offseason. Then now they got Devin Witherspoon on their team, and they got Jackson Smith the Jigba. I don't know why they I get why they drafted I can never pronounce his name.
Zach Charbonnet in the second round.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet. Thank you. So I don't know why they drafted him in the second round, but him and Kenneth Walker behind that offensive line, that's scary. I mean, I think they're a team that could win 10, 11 games this year.
By the way, when did they rename Quest Field Lumen Field? I missed that
4 years ago.
Was it? Shoot.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with those.
Yeah, they lost the Quest Field. I guess it was like a 18, 19, 20-year deal or something.
Completely lost that one. Completely.
No, it wasn't.
I call it the bird's nest.
I call it the home of the 12th man because they did lay claim for that pretty early.
Lumen Field.
Lumen Field. Well, by the way, God, what is the lamest sports stadium name?
Oh, there's so many. There's so
Lone
many.
Depot Park's a good one. I think that's a lame name.
The Miami Arena they just renamed again.
Oh, FTX Arena.
No, it's something. Isn't it something else now?
Is it Crypto.com? It's
now Crypto.com is LA.
Yeah, that's LA. I still call that the Staples Center.
Right.
So do I.
Toenailed. It's Crypto Center.
So do I.
We can't look down our nose at other cities because they've changed the name of the building where the Flyers and the Sixers play about 5 times.
I still call it
that's what happens when banks get involved. Banks get eaten by other banks, and they just keep changing the names of the arena.
Yeah. So Jeff brought up the Miami because we're going to see it, the Heat. Well, I guess that FTX went under, so now it's the Kaizia Center, whatever the hell that is. Yeah, I can't keep up with them.
I can't hear. Just keep one name. But you know what? I still can't call it MetLife Stadium. I know it's MetLife Stadium, but to me, it's the Meadowlands.
Yeah, it was nice when it just.
All right. Speaking of MetLife Stadium, I wanted to ask you this, Jeff, because you stay on top of the entire division, Mr. NFC East. Somebody pointed this out to me, and we talk about the way the schedule lays out, advantage, disadvantage, and certain media members here in Philadelphia think the Eagles were somehow screwed and or disrespected by their schedule. I don't get that a little bit.
No, I don't either. By the way, the Eagles are really good. I'm not even worried about the schedule, to be honest with you.
Yeah, same here. But the Giants, after they open up at home against Dallas, who, oh, by the way, we know they have problems with, kind of like the Eagles. They can't beat Dallas. They can't beat the Eagles. 7 out of their next 10 games on the road, that's pretty tricky. Now, if you get through that and you're shoot, I'd even take 6-5 if I were the Giants. If you get through that first 11 at 6-5, it lightens up on the back end, but maybe you don't get to it. Maybe you're 4-7, and then that's a big time problem. If there's any team that kind of got the short end of the schedule, I was surprised they laid the Giants schedule out the way they did. 7 out of 10 games on the road.
Well, I think they got a bad hand in. They get to play the Eagles 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season. I mean, they can't beat the Eagles to save their lives right now, and you're going to play them in Lincoln Financial Field on Christmas, then you potentially might be playing for a playoff spot in Week 18. I don't care if it's at home or not. Like, the Eagles might be playing for something then, too, and you're right about the whole 7 of 10 thing. By the way, Joe, did you see your Jets play 10 of the first 15 at MetLife Stadium?
Oh, they're heavy at the beginning of the season, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now, granted, one of the Jets / who's the I guess the Giants are technically the road team for Giants-Jets this year. It's
a Jet home game, I think so, yes.
Okay, so against So was it like 7 of their first 9 or I got to look this up again. But yeah, I don't know. The Giants could be that candidate that if you just look at the early part of their schedule, they could be the candidate instead of starting 6-2 like they did last year. They could start 3-5, 3-6. It's very. I think the Giants are a better team, but I think they're going to take a step back this year.
Speaking of the Giants, in disrespect, Pro Football Focus, number 1 roster in the NFL, your Philadelphia Eagles. Number 6, Dallas Cowboys. Number 17, the Washington Commanders. Number 23, the New York Giants.
They have the Commanders roster is better than the Giants roster.
They do have a good roster, but they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
That's their.
Do you think that's too much disrespect for the New York Football Giants?
I do. I would put the Giants at least the top 20. I mean, but I still don't understand New York's philosophy this offseason. You just lost 38-7 to the Eagles in a game you weren't even competitive in. You were kind of stuck in that purgatory. Yet, let's franchise tag Saquon. Let's sign Daniel Jones to a big contract. Let's not really improve the wide receiver position enough. Now, they did get Darren Waller, but Darren Waller's been hurt a lot. Yeah. I don't think they've improved the offensive line much, if at all. I think their defense could be a little bit better, but I don't like how they got rid of Julian Love in order to do it. I thought Julian Love had a really good year for them last year. I just don't get what they're doing there. I guess you're trying to install a culture, but are you really are you trying to tie yourselves in the NFL purgatory?
I think they were taken by surprise, to be honest, how well Daniel Jones played last season. And now they got to pay him. And I mean, what's the upside there? I think that's the problem. That's the going rate. That's the cost of doing business. I get why they had to do it, but I don't necessarily want to do that. That is a difficult decision if you're Joe Shane, the GM. Do you just say, you know what? This guy's not good enough. We made the playoffs. How do you sell that to the fan base? You win a playoff game. How do you sell that and say, oh, we're moving on from Daniel Jones?
The worst thing that could happen to the Giants last year was they went 9-7-1. They probably would have been better off winning 4 or 5 games last year.
Yeah, that's my point. I don't know how, again, young GM, how does he sell that? Even if he wants to do that. I don't know if he can. That's,
Especially with that fan base.
Yeah.
I mean, that fan base still thinks that they're a touchdown away from being the Eagles. It's weird.
Yeah, Daniel Jones finished ahead of Kirk Cousins in passer rating last year, which I still don't understand. Kirk Cousins had Jefferson to throw to. Who the hell was Daniel Jones throwing to last year? He did. He had a surprisingly good season, but now we'll see if it worked for them with the amount of money they got to pay him. Jeff Kerr, always a pleasure. Appreciate you jumping in. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for doing it today, bud.
Yep, always a pleasure, guys. A lot of Sixers. Still frustrated with Sixers today, but thank God I got the NFL to worry about.
Exactly right. We put the Sixers in the rearview mirror to cover the Philadelphia Eagles, which we do here every day on Birds 365. And Johnny Mac and Jody Mac are coming back to put a bow on today's show.
Thanks, Chef.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
This is Governor Ed Rendell urging you to vote for my friend Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court. I appointed Judge Dugan in 2007 to the Philadelphia Municipal Court, where he now serves as its president judge. Pat is a proud Army veteran of 23 years. He served 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. But most importantly, he bleeds Eagles green and hates those Dallas Cowboys. So get out and vote for number 3, Judge Pat Dugan for Superior Court.
Paid for by Dugan 2023.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys, drawing to a close a Monday edition of Birds 365. Appreciate you streaming in. Just an aside, John, and I don't even understand why I feel this way. I've always kind of liked Robert Kraft as the owner of the Patriots. I think he's done a great job. I think he's a front and center guy. Happy endings off to the side. Don't know about that whole thing, but he was exonerated. Can I even say that about the way that it was handled going forward? But it
I wouldn't say exonerated, but
I don't like. If you got a better word for me to describe the dispensation of that case, please feel free to share. But you know what? It just bothers the snot out of me when I see him at a Celtic-Sixer game.
Really?
Yeah, I don't understand my own psychosis on this, but it just bothered, and probably because the Sixers lost. If the Sixers won, it probably wouldn't bother me near as much, if at all. But you got your own friggin' Super Bowl championship team. Do you really have to sit courtside and be the one of the guys? Because ESPN or any of the broadcast outlets will have to show you the celebrities at the game. Celebrities for me should be someone in a field other than sports, but Robert Kraft is a celebrity because he's owner of the Patriots. I don't know why, but that just bugged the snot out of me, seeing Kraft at any of the Celtics.
I don't know. I mean, to me, the bigger thing is the Celtics. I mean, obviously the Celtics-Sixers rivalry, for us that know history, goes back quite a while. And, you know, it was really difficult when Bill Russell and company were there and they won every year. And, you know, the Sixers got over the hump in 66, 67, one of the greatest teams of all time. You had the Larry Bird, Julius Erving six, where they were phenomenal. The Celtics aren't nearly as good as those groups of Celtics, but they beat the Sixers every stinking time. Every stinking time. And you're supposed to have the MVP, and it's frustrating.
Or maybe I should be more mad at Jeff Lurie for not being courtside at the
Well,
Sixers.
he's a Celtics fan. I hate to break it.
Like I said, maybe I should be more annoyed that Jeff Lurie isn't at the
same that Devontae Smith. He's not playing along. He's not playing. He's good friends with Jason Tatum.
Where is we know Jeff Lurie is originally from the Boston area. Where's Robert Kraft from?
I don't know. Good question. I think he's from that area, but I don't know.
I don't know that either.
I know he lives in Florida. like everybody else, but every other rich person. And that's where he's getting happy endings.
Yeah, next to some very good massage.
Brookline, Massachusetts is
okay. So he's a Massachusetts guy through and through. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff learned to root for the Eagles. He should learn to root for the Sixers. All right, brother, we're out of time. Good Monday show. Thank you very much for that. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to anybody who hits the like button on the way out. That would be much appreciated. I don't understand the whole algorithm thing, but they keep telling me, tell them to hit the like button. So we will do just that. Please do so on your way out and then be back here. I'm in for tomorrow. You in, J-Mac?
Let's do it.
McMullen and McDonald back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.